All right, folks, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into the EU's AI Act.
Woof. Yeah, that's a big one.
It's a dense one, for sure.
It's a lot of pages.
But trust me, this isn't just some dry legal document that only matters to tech lawyers and policymakers.
Yeah, no, this is the kind of thing that has ripple effects.
This is about how the entire world is trying to set rules for the future of AI, and that means it could directly impact you no matter where you live or what you do.
You said it. The EU is really shooting to be a global leader here.
Trying to set the standard.
They see the massive potential of AI. I mean, who doesn't? But they're also very aware that without some rules of the road, things could go off the rails pretty quickly.
It's like every day we're hearing about some amazing AI breakthrough, but then the next minute there's a disturbing story about bias or some other potential harm.
Yeah, you got to balance the good with the scary. Right.
So it sounds like the EU is trying to walk that tightrope, fostering innovation, but making sure AI doesn't turn into like a Black Mirror episode, you know?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you encourage the good while preventing the bad? And the EU is very clear. They see AI as a powerful force for good, boosting economies, improving healthcare, even helping us fight climate change. But they're also sending a strong message. If your AI system can significantly impact people's lives, you better be ready to prove it's safe, fair, and doesn't come with a side of unintended consequences.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question. Who exactly is on the hook here? Is this about reining in big tech companies, or could this AI Act affect someone like me, even if I never actually go to Europe?
That's what makes this so interesting. The AI Act casts a pretty wide net.
It's not just about Silicon Valley.
It's not just about tech giants. It applies to companies big and small, even individuals.
Individuals, wow.
And here's the real kicker. It applies to anyone inside or outside the EU if their AI system has an impact on EU citizens.
So let me get this straight. Let's say I'm a developer in Silicon Valley, or even a student working on some AI project in their dorm room. If my creation ends up being used by someone in the EU, I could be subject to these rules.
You got it. It's not about where you are, it's about who your AI might impact. Now, there are some exceptions, of course, like purely academic research or military applications. But for most of us who are developing or using AI in our everyday lives, this act is the real deal.
Wow. It really seems like the EU is trying to get ahead of the game here. They know that AI doesn't respect national borders, so they're setting the stage for the entire world. But how do they even begin to regulate something as complex and rapidly evolving as AI? I mean, where do you even start?
They've taken what they call a risk-based approach. They've created different categories based on the potential harm that an AI system could cause.
So, like, different levels of risk.
Exactly. Think of it like a sliding scale from the totally unacceptable to the relatively benign.
All right, so let's break down these AI risk categories. Where does the EU draw the line? What kind of AI is considered so risky that it's basically banned?
They don't mess around when it comes to what they call unacceptable risk AI. These are systems that are considered so potentially harmful that they're essentially blacklisted in the EU.
Okay, no messing around. So what kind of AI is on the EU's no-fly list? Give me some examples.
Think of an AI system that's designed to manipulate people, like through subliminal techniques or something, or exploit their vulnerabilities in a way that could really cause harm.
Yeah, that's getting into some shady territory.
For sure. That's a hard no for the EU.
Hmm.
They also really shut down anything that feels like a dystopian social credit system.
Using AI to, like, rank people's trustworthiness based on their data?
Exactly. That's a big no.
Yeah, the social scoring thing definitely raises some red flags for me. It seems like something out of a sci-fi movie, but we've seen real-world attempts.
Right, and that's why the EU is putting their foot down. They're also drawing a hard line against any AI that profiles people in a way that could lead to discrimination. Like, imagine an AI that flags someone as a potential criminal based just on their age or race or where they live.
It sounds like they're trying to get ahead of some pretty serious societal problems that AI could make even worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So those are the unacceptable risks, totally off limits. Then we have what they call the high-risk category.
Okay, so high-risk AI. What lands an AI system in that bucket?
These are AI systems that have the potential to cause some serious harm if they fail or if they're misused. We're talking about AI being used in areas like healthcare, finance, employment, even law enforcement.
Wow, those are some high-stakes areas. If an AI makes a wrong call in one of those areas, the consequences could be huge.
Exactly. We're talking life-changing stuff. So think about an AI system that's used to diagnose diseases or recommend treatments. A misdiagnosis there, that could be devastating. Or how about an AI-powered system that's deciding who gets a loan, who gets hired for a job, or even predicting if someone might commit a crime? These are all decisions that can have a huge impact on people's lives, and the EU is basically saying, hold on, we need some serious safeguards here.
So it's not that those uses of AI are bad in and of themselves, it's that the stakes are so high if something goes wrong.
Exactly. It's about putting some really strong guardrails in place to make sure these systems are being used responsibly.
Got it. Okay, so we've got unacceptable risk, total no-go, and high risk, where there's a ton of scrutiny. What about the rest?
Right, so then we have the transparency risk category. This one's all about AI systems where if they aren't transparent, things could get messy.
So it's not that the AI itself is dangerous, but more about making sure people know what's going on.
Precisely. A perfect example of this is chatbots. They're getting so good that sometimes it's hard to even tell if you're talking to a real person or an AI.
Oh, yeah. I've been there.
And the AI Act is saying, hey, in these cases, users have a right to know they're talking with a machine, not a human. Transparency helps build trust.
It's like that saying, if you're talking to someone online and you can't tell if they're a dog or a human, it probably doesn't matter. But when an AI is making decisions that affect your life, it matters a lot.
You got it. And this need for transparency also goes for things like deepfakes. The AI Act is saying, if you're creating or using those super realistic fake videos or images, you better be upfront about it.
Don't be trying to trick people, basically. Transparency really feels more important than ever. All right, so we've got unacceptable risk, high risk, transparency risk. What's left?
That leaves the final category, minimal risk.
Mm.
This is where most AI systems live. Think spam filters, recommendation algorithms, those AI photo filters. Those are usually considered low risk because the chances of them causing serious harm are pretty slim.
So it sounds like for your average everyday AI, the EU is taking a pretty hands-off approach.
Yeah, if it's not likely to cause any major harm, they're not going to bog you down in red tape.
Makes sense. But for those developers and companies working on the high-risk stuff, what's the deal? What hoops do they have to jump through? What does the AI Act actually require them to do?
Well, first off, the EU wants to be sure that high-risk AI isn't just being developed all willy-nilly.
Yep.
No Wild West scenarios.
Right, some rules of the road.
Exactly. So they're introducing something called conformity assessments.
Conformity assessments. Sounds pretty official.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, right?
It does sound kind of bureaucratic. Break it down for me. What does it mean in plain English?
Basically, it's a really rigorous inspection process. Before you can release a high-risk AI system to the public, you need to prove that it meets certain standards.
Show your work, basically.
Yeah, kinda. You have to be able to show that it's been designed and tested for safety, that it's not going to perpetuate bias, that it's reliable, that sort of thing.
So it's like getting your AI system certified. Like, this AI is roadworthy, it's not going to go rogue and start making decisions it's not supposed to.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just a one-time checkup either.
Yeah.
If you make any big changes to your system or how it's used, you have to go through the assessment process again.
So they're keeping a close eye on things.
Absolutely. Regular checkups to make sure those algorithms are still on their best behavior.
I like it. What else is in the EU's playbook for keeping high-risk AI in check?
Transparency is huge.
Mm.
A big focus of the AI Act is making those black boxes a little more see-through.
No more shadowy algorithms making life-altering decisions without anyone knowing how they work.
Exactly.
Mm.
Developers need to be upfront about how their AI works, what data they use to train it, and what steps they took to reduce those potential risks. No more hiding behind complexity.
So it's all out in the open. You can see the nuts and bolts.
Well, maybe not the nuts and bolts, but you get the idea.
Fair enough. So less mystery, more accountability.
Exactly. And documentation is a key part of that. Companies have to keep detailed records about their AI systems, how they were developed, how they're being used, what they're doing about bias, all of it.
Sounds like a lot of paperwork.
It is, but it's important paperwork.
Yeah, when you're dealing with AI that could impact people's livelihoods, it makes sense to keep a clear paper trail. So you've got the conformity assessments, the transparency requirements, anything else.
Yeah, there's also ongoing monitoring.
Yeah.
This isn't a set it and forget it kind of thing.
They're keeping their eyes on the prize.
The AI Act actually puts regulatory bodies in charge of keeping a watchful eye on high-risk AI systems. Even after they've been released, they'll be doing audits, looking into complaints, making sure everything's running smoothly.
So high-risk AI is basically on probation. You can use it, but we're watching you. They're serious about this stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I gotta ask about something that always seems to come up when we talk about AI and regulation. Facial recognition, biometric identification.
Ah, yes. The stuff of science fiction, except now it's becoming more and more common in the real world.
Right, it feels like something out of Minority Report, but it's happening now. It can be a little creepy, to be honest.
Definitely. And from an ethical and legal perspective, it's one of the most complex areas of AI because it's so closely tied to fundamental rights like privacy and freedom from surveillance.
Big Brother and all that.
Exactly. So how does the AI Act handle this particularly sensitive use of AI? Well, it takes a pretty tough stance on what they call real-time biometric identification, especially when it's being used in public spaces.
Okay, so we're talking about those facial recognition cameras you see in some cities, the ones that can identify people in real time, like on the street or in a store.
Exactly. And the general rule under the Act is that kind of use is banned.
Wow, no more Big Brother watching your every move. That's kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal, and it sends a strong message about privacy. But like with most things, it's not quite so black and white. While the general rule is a ban, the EU recognizes there might be certain situations, certain very high-stakes scenarios, where real-time biometric identification could be necessary.
There are always exceptions to the rule. So, what kind of scenarios are we talking about?
Things like preventing serious crimes, terrorism, child abduction, where identifying someone quickly could be critical, or if there's an immediate threat to someone's safety, or even trying to locate a missing person.
So, it's not like law enforcement can just start using facial recognition whenever they want. There's some pretty strict rules about when it's okay.
Very strict. They need to get special permission first, and there are strict limits on how long they can hold on to the data. The EU is really trying to find that balance,
Yeah.
weighing the potential benefits against the potential risks to people's fundamental rights.
Not an easy task, that's for sure. Okay, we've covered a ton of ground here. The why behind the AI Act, the different risk categories, those rules for high-risk AI, and even the EU's stance on facial recognition. But here's the big question. Is this act future-proof? AI is changing so quickly, how can any law keep up?
It's a question a lot of people are asking, and it's a valid concern. But the people who put this act together, they knew they were dealing with a rapidly evolving technology, and they built in some flexibility. The act itself isn't super specific about every little technical detail. Instead, it focuses more on outcomes and reducing risks.
So it's less about trying to predict the future of AI and more about establishing a solid framework for ethical and responsible development, no matter what crazy new AI comes along.
Exactly. Plus, the act includes a process for review and revision, so it's not set in stone. They're committed to revisiting these rules as needed to keep pace with the technology.
It's a living document. I like that.
And probably most important of all, the EU gets that AI is a global issue. It doesn't stop at borders. So they're working with other countries to try to establish some international standards for ethical and responsible AI development. Collaboration is key.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, AI is something we all have to figure out together. It's a global conversation, a shared responsibility. Well, we've certainly done a deep dive on this episode. We've explored the ins and outs of the EU's AI Act, and hopefully it's gotten you thinking about the bigger picture, too. As you go about your day interacting with AI in all its forms, because let's face it, AI is everywhere, take a moment to consider, what kind of future do you want to see for AI? What role do you want it to play in your life, in society as a whole?
Those are the questions we should all be asking.
Couldn't agree more. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the EU's AI Act. We hope you found it informative, insightful, and maybe even a little inspiring. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep exploring the ever-evolving world of AI. Until next time.